Hello, and welcome to In the DeNovo. I'm Will Grace, founder and managing director here at DeNovo Treasury, where we empower leaders of community financial institutions entering commercial and industrial banking with expertise for their strategic investment in treasury management products and services. We prioritize the how over the what. We believe in a collaborative journey and go beyond traditional services by actively transferring treasury management expertise to our clients. Thank you for joining us and staying in the know within the DeNovo.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of In the DeNovo. I'm your co-host, Sarah Lennox, the Director of Operations and Growth here at DeNovo Treasury. Will and I have an exciting segment for you all today, and we're thrilled to introduce to you VerityPay, a faster payment system for B2C payments via SMS text message. We're joined with Bob Bowden, President and CEO, and Mark Montgomery, COO. Bob and Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you provide a little bit of a background to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So my name is Bob Bowden. I'm the founder and CEO at VerityPay. We started the company about 3 years ago with just an idea on a napkin, and that was, to help businesses get away from paper checks and move into a more digital format that had better efficiencies and cost savings for businesses, and along the way we found that they're quite helpful for banks as well, and so we're just thrilled to be here. Thank you for having us.
And I'm Mark Montgomery, the COO for VerityPay. I've been working with Bob in various capacities for about 6 years. In my background, I'm a former bank CEO, a 42-year banking career. Bob and I met in my last role as the CEO for BBVA Compass here in Houston. And we became fast friends and been working together for the past 6 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
That's an
thanks for
awesome
joining
origin
us.
story. You mentioned the Post-it notes. Will, did you not start DeNovo with something similar?
I had a Post-it note, and I was going to ask.
Post-it note, yes. Versus
Yeah,
napkins.
I was going to ask Bob if he had the napkin still and if it was framed anywhere.
I don't have the napkin anymore. But we've saved everything else along the way.
Yeah. Well, mine was on a Post-it note. We called it Project Yellow Sticky Note when we started DeNovo.
I love it.
How fun.
Did you keep the Post-it note?
I did not keep the Post-it note, but I still have the book with all the other notes in it. So that's fun.
So we ditched the napkin, ditched the Post-it notes, but we kept the vision. Love it.
Yeah, it'd be fun to have it framed if we still had it.
Well, thank you both for joining us. So we'll start getting into some of our questions. And I kind of wanted to start with Mark, especially with your background as a former banker, and now you're with VerityPay. We really love the space that you're in. So community banks, who we primarily work with, are in particular need of solutions that make them stand out versus some of the larger competitors or their regional peers. So with your former banking experience, what would you say the most important thing to you about VerityPay is?
Boy, it's hard to choose just one, but I think the most important side is that it pays people rapidly. Well, I'm going to go into all of them because it pays people rapidly. It reduces fraud, instant reconciliation with the clients, and the cost savings is immense. And so, it's funny that I was a banker that banked businesses for all these years, and I'm just now getting to appreciate all the intricacies of a business and how much is entailed in reducing expenses, et cetera, and just how it all operates. I mean, I thought I knew, but the day to day. So to have this solution and know that fraud will be reduced and expenses will come down and people will get paid rapidly and you'll have information faster, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I love that. So those are some of the benefits. What would you say maybe the biggest problem that the platform actually solves for the financial institutions themselves?
That's a great question. And back to the fraud side, businesses write checks to consumers. Most of the checks that are written these days from businesses are to consumers, because electronic means are used via, to pay businesses via ACH or wire or what have you. There's still some checks, but if you take the total number of checks that are written today, the percentage of business to consumer checks is increasing as everything else is decreasing, right? And so, and yet fraud is increasing. Consumer checks are a lot of the fraud problem. And if you took an average of what does it cost per check written, it's about $9 or $10 that each check written in a given year by anybody absorbs in fraud expense. So not only are you reducing the cost, the operational cost, and the expense of a check and the mail and the reconciliation, but the fraud's going down as well.
Wow, that's awesome. I don't think I even considered fraud when I was just first looking at the website and, exploring how the solution worked, particularly because it's very mobile first. So that kind of brings me into our next question. If you could tell the audience, how exactly does the platform work?
Bob, I'm going to let you design this puppy. So
yeah, so it's really to keep it simple, Sarah. It's really a twofold process on how VerityPay works, right? The idea is to get money from businesses to consumers, and we wanted it to be advantageous for both parties. And so we designed the platform so that it makes a ton of sense on the back end. So that controllers and the AP department, has clarity and simplicity and reconciliation. The folks, who are leading the charge can see that it's affecting their bottom line in a positive way. But we also wanted to make it, advantageous for the consumer, right? There's nothing more frustrating for a consumer than to get a check that's sub $100 in the mail from, a business that they either are doing business with or used to do business with. And then if they don't have, remote deposit capture, they're having to march themselves down to the bank, deposit the check. It's just a troubling exercise for all parties. And so we wanted to create something that was really sleek, that worked quickly, that provided cost savings, fraud reduction, and an enjoyable experience for the consumer. And what we ended up with was a platform that, as far as I can tell, and as far as I've seen on the competitive landscape, it's the only product that puts the onus of accepting those funds and where to direct those funds on the recipient. And so it kind of takes that responsibility off of the payer and puts it on the payee, right? They're notified of a payment, and it's up to them to decide where they want that payment to go, which is really the way that it should be, because there's so many individuals out there today who are underbanked or unbanked altogether, but yet they all have a phone, right? And so they're living on Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, that kind of thing. And so it speaks their language as well.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of Venmo. I use Venmo fairly regularly, especially with friends. It's a really easy system to use. So would you say that the platform is just as seamless, or what was the word you used? I think you said sleek. That's a fun word. Yeah. It's just as sleek as some of those other guys that consumers are really familiar with, like Venmo, Zelle. I think those are probably the biggest ones. PayPal, I know, has been around since forever.
Yeah. So right now we're integrated with Venmo and PayPal.
Okay.
And so we've adopted, their ease of use. And so what we noticed, though, is in the different demographics prefer different channels, right? And so the sub 55 market prefers Venmo, and 55 and older prefer PayPal. And they're still rocking the same username they had when they were selling stuff on eBay. And so, it just works. It just works.
That makes sense. So that's from the consumer side. But from the customer side, I guess so you have the banks and then you have the businesses, which would be our customer's customer. What kind of use cases are you finding there, or businesses that have really adopted this since your launch?
Mark, you want to take that, or you want me to?
Why don't you go for it?
Okay. So we found a a lot of stickiness in 5 different verticals, right? So there's healthcare, insurance, utilities, government, and telcos. There's a lot of subsectors of that. For instance, in the insurance space, we've kind of gone deep here in title insurance, escrow refunds, filing, recording fee refunds, that kind of thing. And we've had great success there. And so, there's a lot of application to be had anytime that there's a business that issues payments to a consumer. There's a use case for our technology. In fact, the most recent customer that we have is a jury duty. It's a gig working business, but it's a jury duty consulting business, and just kind of off the wall. But there was a warm connection there, and we said, hey, perhaps this would be a good fit for you. And they said, sure, we'll give it a try. They're now on their 3rd consecutive payment cycle with 100% conversion rate on the platform, which is unbelievable. We have a 7-day payment cycle, and they've converted all the longest time it took to convert to 100% was 1 hour and 47 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, we were shocked.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also don't know that I have ever heard of a jury duty consulting business.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So if you'll imagine, like a major corporation, right?
Sure.
Here in Houston, Exxon, Chevron, the big oil and gas companies, if they have like a workers' comp claim that goes to trial, they're going to do a lot of background work to make sure that the jury for that trial is stacked in their favor. And the way that they do that is they bring in people from the general public, and they poll them, and they do mock trials, and they see how they would, which direction they would choose to go in the event of a jury trial, so that when the real trial comes, they can select their jurors wisely.
That is very interesting. You learn something new every day.
Absolutely.
So I kind of wanted to go back to the origin story, the napkin story, for a minute. Could you tell us a little bit more about what inspired the creation of VerityPay and what the initial vision was for the company? And, now that you just went in and told that whole story about jury duty consulting firms, and I'm sure that you've learned so much along the way, but with what you've learned along the way, has it matched what that initial vision was?
Yeah, I think that it has. So to kind of back up and give some color to the background here, I started a company about 10 years ago called Verity Advisors. And we do a lot of work in the unclaimed property space. So we do complex estate settlements and that kind of thing. We work closely with the comptroller's office here in Texas. And we find people who are hard to find and get back money for them that, as Mark says all the time, that they didn't know was missing. Right. And so that's a ton of fun. But, I've always wanted to do something more innovative and build something that could really add value to the broader marketplace. And so we went to the data and just to kind of see, unbiasedly, what is the data going to tell us? And when you look at unclaimed property, what you'll notice, and I'll kind of quantify this here, in Texas, there's about 3.5 million accounts a year that are escheated or turned over to unclaimed property. Of those 3.5 million, 93% of them belong to consumers, and 85% of those consumers are still alive, which should actually preclude them from being involved in unclaimed property to begin with. The average account value is $161. And so we said, what's the problem here, right? And as you go through and you look at the different property types and payment types that make up that 3.5 million, they're largely paper checks, right? They're paper checks that were either not large enough for somebody to be motivated enough to go to the bank and deposit, or they were lost, stolen, or damaged in the mail. And either way, it's an inefficient process. And so that's kind of when the light bulb went off, and we said, we have to digitize this process. And how do we make this, something that can be a win-win for everybody involved? And so, we started rolling around different ideas, and, even 24 months ago, the idea wasn't what it is today, right? We originally thought, hey, we'll hold the funds for disbursement, we'll focus on dormant accounts, that kind of thing. And it quickly became evident that, where we needed to place ourselves was at the front of the line, not at the back of the line. And on a payment cycle perspective, right, that's not what I mean by that is, instead of focusing on dormant accounts, right, let's be the first course of action that these companies take to reduce the number of checks that are outbound. We know we're not going to, probably ever get rid of all paper checks, right? Some people, especially in rural communities and some of the elderly folks who just haven't taken to the new digital transformation, they're always going to want checks. So I think for probably the next 50 years, we're stuck with some volume of checks in the system. So lockbox is not going anywhere. There's still going to be a need for that. That being said, if we can step up in the front, right, and there's a business that has 1,000 payments that need to go out, let's issue the 1,000. Let's convert, our average, which is 83%. We'll take the other 17% and fold them back into the status quo or the original way of doing business and issue them a paper check, and we'll go about it that way. But if we can reduce 83% of outbound payments digitally to get rid of that paper and the risk of fraud, then I think that we're doing a very good job.
When
yeah,
you think
I
about,
would say.
you think of, I'm sorry, you think about that in an hour and 47 minutes, 1,000 texts go out. 830 of them have been accepted. So reconciliation is done. The 170 that you now need to focus on, and you have more resources to do it because you didn't spend your time licking. I mean, probably took 2 hours to lick and stamp envelopes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I have to imagine no one wants to do. I at least know my personal preference. I am absolutely not one of those folks who has my checkbook at the ready. Admittedly, I couldn't even tell you the last time I wrote a physical check. So I'm definitely not part of the neophobic crowd when it comes to embracing the digital transformation, as you said. But for even those who do utilize a lot of the more modern technologies and products that are on the market, you had mentioned fraud several times, and I know that that's like a very real fear for people. So could you talk a little bit more about how VerityPay ensures the security and then the privacy of the transactions for their end users?
Sure. So, security and privacy are paramount to what we're, trying to do, right? In revolutionizing consumer disbursements. We've taken a very hands-on approach to this, and there's several key things that we've done along the way that play a big role in that. So the first is on our platform, we actually require zero financial information when it comes to paying someone on Venmo or PayPal. We don't need a routing and account number or any information that would be transmitted back and forth that would allow somebody to hack into that recipient's payment information, and vice versa. They also wouldn't be able to hack into the payer's PayPal, Venmo account, that kind of thing, and certainly not their deposit account. When the payments go out, we have a security mechanism that's right up front after the link is clicked on that's toggled, and it's information that only the payer and the payee would know. Right? It could be the last four of the payee's social. It could be a driver's license number. It could be, the digits of their address. We've got title companies using that. There's several different, alternatives that they can use to prove who they're paying. And so we found that very effective. So it has to go through several different levels of security and also just common sense features, right? If we're paying John Smith at a particular phone number, and the phone number is typoed, right? And the last four of John Smith's phone number is 7069, and it goes to 7068. The chances of the person with 7068 knowing the information for John Smith and taking his money are slim to none, right? We've never had an issue on that front. I don't think that we'll ever have it would probably take some, quant guy from MIT to figure out what are the actual odds that this would have, some kind of a negative implication in the marketplace. So there's that. From an actual security standpoint on the platform, we are SOC 2 compliant. We've got an audit log, so we keep track of everything that happens on the platform. We do require dual approvals and dual authorization for all the payments. And so one person has to log in and upload the payments, and then a supervisor, as they're nominated on the platform, has to go in and approve those payments for outbound. So if they all have the same cell phone number, that'll throw a flag and send a message to one of the supervisors on the platform and that kind of thing. So we have all the basic things in place to be compliant with SOC 2 and the other compliance measures that are most important to our clients. And then we've just built in some of the other features into the platform to verify and validate that we're actually paying the proper party.
That makes a lot of sense.
On the recipient side, so the consumer, have you had any issues with the consumer wondering who VerityPay is and wondering if they have spam coming into their cell phone or mobile phone and being unsure about clicking on something? That's something that's big these days too, right? The spam stuff coming.
Yeah, all
Has
the
there been any issue with that?
phishing attacks.
We have not had any issue with that, but as we launched the business and we started pitching, right, that was the number one concern. And so we started pitching before we launched. Okay. And so as we were in dev mode, we were taking that feedback and asking ourselves and everyone around us, what can we do to kind of mitigate this, this thought that people are going to be skittish about this and they're going to be scared to click on the link and how do we get around that? And so we came up with a 4-pronged approach that we take internally to mitigate that. But I'll tell you before I get into those, the first one that is most important is going to be our clients, the payers, educating their consumer base that this is the way that they're paying people now. Okay. Right. And so them sending out email blasts, we have media campaigns and toolboxes that they can take and utilize that. Hey, here's our text number. It's a static number. It's not going anywhere. We're not issuing paper checks anymore. Here's how you can, expect payment if there's, a refund, rebate, or overpayment to be returned to you, and that kind of thing. On our end, the 4 things that we've done: 1, the text messages are highly personalized. They don't look like they came from VerityPay, right? They look like they came from the payer. And so that's step 1. And what I mean by personalized is, in this case, it would say, Will Grace, this is Acme Company, and we have a refund from the service we provided to you through whatever the policy number is or the address that was serviced, if it's a utility company or the doctor's office, without violating HIPAA compliance, that kind of thing. And so those things start to add up and they go, hey, that makes sense. That makes sense. I did go to Dr. Jones on the 18th. And I did pay out of pocket, and they may owe me, some funds back. The next step in that of the 4 is that every single one of our texts has a link back to where the recipients or the payees can come to find information out. Right? Is this actually legit? And we have a list of FAQs that can go up on our clients, the payers' websites. But the most important thing there is that we're directing them back to a subdomain that belongs to the purported payer, right? And so they're seeing that it's taking them to their website, and so that adds a level of validity as well.
Right.
Thirdly, is all of our texts come from a 10 DLC phone number, a 10-digit long code phone number, and we just got through election season. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were sending messages out, and every other state representative that was running for office, from those little 5-digit codes, right? And those little 5-digit text codes are associated with advertisements and spam and that kind of thing. And so we really wanted to differentiate ourselves from that. And then lastly, the fourth thing is just the repetitive nature of our messaging, right? So if we set up a payment for 1:17 p.m. And the payment notifications go out then, and say half the recipients are busy or they don't know, they want to look into it, they want to call the company, and then they forget about it. Well, tomorrow at 1:17 p.m. Those payments will go out again. Those notifications that on the folks who have not been paid yet, they'll be notified again, and that'll happen every day at the same time for 7 days. And the ironic thing is, we close 15% of our conversion rate on day 7. So as you get to closer to day 7, it starts to say, hey, you only have 48 hours left. This is your final notice. This link will expire, and you'll be issued a paper check. And when they see that, hey, paper check. The link is going to expire, people start to move. And so we actually wrap 15% of our conversion rate there on the last day, which is fun to watch.
That would be me. I would be procrastinating down to the last day, but as soon as I saw paper check, I'd be like, nope, no thank you.
Yep. Well, the fact that the jury duty folks were all accepted payments within an hour and 47 minutes.
Yeah.
They were all notified this is coming. Here's where it's coming from. Here's the phone number. So be expecting it. That made for an easy launch and for easy conversion.
Yeah,
that's great.
That makes a lot of sense. So another question, kind of more geared toward the bank side of things, since you talked a lot about what it looks like as it looks like it's coming from the business that's issuing the payment, what it looks like for the consumer. But as we go in and we start talking to the actual banks and the credit unions about these solutions, how well does it integrate with their existing systems and technologies and the platforms that they're using?
So it's quite easy. We have an API plugin. We can put forward any information that the bank wants to use within their treasury platform. So that's no problem. Typically what we've seen though is the banks want to try, a few of their chip shot customers first, right? To kind of see how they like it. How does it work? Are they seeing results with it? And then we'll start talking about integrations from there. But we have all the technology and capability to do API integrations. And so that's typically been our cadence though, right? Is we'll start with 1 or 2 and then start working towards doing a more full go integration into their treasury platform.
Sure. That makes sense. So the next question then would be for our Will. How do you see the partnership here between DeNovo Treasury and VerityPay providing value to our clients and prospective clients that fall within that community financial institution range of folks?
Yeah, and something we're very excited about and will have been announced by the time this gets shown is the partnership between VerityPay and DeNovo Treasury. And what we do for our clients is we're helping them with moving and advancing their treasury management business from and diversifying and moving from your typical real estate type portfolio, moving into treasury management and getting into CNI type business and lending. And they're moving that way, and we're trying to help them with their product organization, moving their product set that way. And what we find is that they typically have a lot of gaps that we're identifying, and that's a 2 to 3 year process of closing those gaps over time. And so we're looking for quick wins and things that we can help them along the way with, finding ways they can differentiate and the ways they can get to market quickly with a solution that'll help them stem that tide while we help them with the other things. And so VerityPay was something I felt was a quick win for these small community banks and credit unions, is something that was a differentiator that they could go to market with, and something to get them into the market with something that was easy to plug in and easy to market to some segments that might be underserved in their communities that, and again, from a, check perspective, way that they can electronify some transactions, and until we can get them onto some different things that will help them also close gaps in their market. But yeah, it's a great, we're really excited about getting this started, and we think there's a great opportunity in this space, which for us is about 8 billion and below, what we consider to be that community bank space.
Right.
Well, Mark, you've got an extensive career in banking, and sounds like hopefully what I said with what we're trying to do with community bank resonated with you.
Yeah, no, it completely resonates with me. When you're competing out there, you're competing generally on rate. It sometimes it seems, and when you can come up with a treasury solution that adds dollars to the bottom line for a business, you're the hero, right? Because brand A, brand X, brand Y, whatever, they're at 6%, 605, whatever, 625. So it's pretty close, and it can be quantified. But this can be quantified too. And I just think if these banks have some of these solutions out there that can make a difference to their bottom line by helping their clients have a better outcome with less fraud, less expense, they're going to win. And particularly when they're trying to make a shift from just real estate lending to lines of credit with treasury solutions to back it up.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're talking about in the industry a lot is instant payments. And I know that this isn't an instant payment. However, our financial institutions are struggling to get to instant payments. I think this is a step in that direction, at least with one mechanism. As we help them get to instant payments, this is a kind of I feel like a half step there, right? This is a way that they can kind of start to introduce this to businesses as a way to disperse payments in a faster way. And as we look for other use cases that make sense from a instant payment perspective, before we get them onto those instant payment rails, this is an alternative to that. So not exactly an instant payment, but definitely a faster payment, and one that helps reduce, the cost associated with checks. So I see this as also a stepping stone or stepping block towards getting them to instant payments, which is not always an easy lift for a community bank, even though it's starting to get there. We're starting to get there. The cores are starting to get their solutions aligned, but even with that, sometimes there's a year wait for these community banks to get onto the roadmap of these cores to get the solution up and running.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for that, Will. This will be our closing question. I mean, the platform itself seems very, very simple by design. It's very straightforward, exactly what it is designed to do. But are there any future developments or additional features that you plan to add to VerityPay within the next couple of years?
Yes and no. There's several things that we have on our radar screen as features that we would like to include. One that I think is probably going to stick and stay, will be the smart chat capability, right? To securely embed AI to be able to have conversations with individuals, to ask, to answer questions that they may have on the text thread about why are you receiving this? When did I start business with this company? And is this legitimate? And how can you prove that to me? And that kind of thing. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we have plans to, add additional payment rails. Right now with the peer-to-peer side, we cover about 97% of all B2C transactions, but we have a cap. So we can only move up to $5,000 per transaction. Now we have some clients that are using this and they have $7,000 to move, and they'll move 4,000 one day and 3,000 the next day, and it's just fine. And it works. But, for larger insurance claims and things of that nature, I think that we would like to have the capability of moving larger funds, but that also comes with its own set of problems that we've we've worked pretty hard to avoid and mitigate right now, right? We don't have account numbers, banking account numbers, and routing numbers on our platform right now. And it's funny when our cyber insurance provider, the underwriters called us and said, here's your bill for the year. I was like blown away because there's, there's so much cyber fraud out there.
Right.
And I get it. I understand why it exists, but I said, look, you guys need to come really take a look at what we're doing. And when they did, they were like, there's nothing here for anybody to steal. And I said, well, that's by design, right? I mean, they can hack in all they want, but I mean, they'll have an easier time finding, the same information on 411.com.
Right.
And
That's
so,
a very
yeah,
good point. Yeah.
And outside of that, Sarah, I think, it's just a matter of, listening to the feedback of our clients. There's little features here and there that we're always working on to provide a better experience for them, to make reconciliation easier and that kind of thing. And so we'll continue to do that, so that we keep our clients happy and using the product and saving themselves and their customers from fraud and losses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. Will, did you have any other final thoughts or comments before we close out the show today?
I just want to thank Bob and Mark for joining and thank them for our newly minted partnership. And we're very excited to get started.
Yes.
Yeah, we are too. Thank you guys for having us. It's been great.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for joining us on the show. For our listeners, the link to VerityPay's website will be in the description below. Definitely go check them out and give them a follow on LinkedIn. Bob and Mark, again, thank you for sitting down with us today. And a big thank you, as always, to our listeners.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of In the DeNovo. For more content like the video we shared today, check out our website at DeNovoTreasury.com and our YouTube channel at DeNovo Treasury. Thanks, and see you next time.